Hey everyone, Mr. Wineland here. This is going to be Chapter 8, Section 2, Part 1. We have two parts with this one. It's a pretty big section, so I just decided to split it up into two different parts. It's just a lot easier to talk about. The first half of this is going to mostly address how did Indian Territory, which is Oklahoma now, really kind of get into the war, the Civil War, and then we're going to talk about the actual war in the territory. We have to look. Remember, the Confederacy came together well after the election of 1860, and then into 1861. Just before spring hit, there was the attack on Fort Sumter, and ultimately led to war in the east, and then eventually made its way into the Western Front. A lot of the war is going to be fought in the east, but also a little bit into the second theater, or what they would say, or the second act would be played in the Western Front. Mostly right around the Mississippi River, but some of it did make its way into Indian Territory. So, why was Indian Territory a part of the Civil War? Why would the Confederates even want to come out here? Well, your answer number 16 is here in the blue here. But the Confederates were basically made aware of the area of its abundance of resources. Things like abundance of horses in this area with the Great Plains, cattle herds for food and hides. Lead deposits were in this area, which could be used for ammunition. Big part was salt. Big, one of the reasons why preserved food, salt was a big deal. And then additional soldiers were also important as well. The territory was also strategically located between the North and the South, and could be a central base west of the Mississippi. I mean, and here's the other thing that you got to consider: you've got, because of its location, it's next to Arkansas and not too far from the Mississippi River, with certain connections to other rivers. It helped with transportation. So with their resources, they can get those. They can go downriver if they needed to transport some of those items. But the other thing is in February of 1861, Texas leaders approached the five tribes, aligning with the Confederacy. Um, but some of them would decline. And we would see that word would spread quickly that there are three military forts manned in Indian Territory, um, and these ultimately these forts would be looked at as possibly being taken under control by the North. You had Fort Washita, southwest corner of Chickasaw Nation; Fort Arbuckle, about 60 miles northwest of Fort Washita, and 160 miles northwest of Fort Washita was Fort Cobb, which were all on Choctaw lands. The regiment of the Texas Militia took over Fort Washita in April of 1861. Federal troops lowered the flag at Fort Arbuckle, and on May 4th, they marched to Fort Cobb with the Texans close behind. And so we would see that the Union troops are going to abandon their posts. Here's your definition for neutral. It's not taking sides. Some of the tribes mostly took the neutral approach. They were not about wanting to go to war. They were not wanting to be a part of this civil war. They didn't see any advantages to it. They had already kind of felt like this was not something they wanted to be a part of. However, many tribes would eventually start to make their way to join the Confederacy during the Civil War, because a lot of them felt like as the war started, the Union basically abandoned Indian Territory, shifting troops elsewhere, whether to go fight west or east of the Mississippi River or other parts of the area. Excuse me. So the Confederates looked at this as an opportunity to take Indian Territory, and so Confederate President Jefferson Davis named Albert Pike as Commissioner of Indian Affairs. And part of Pike's job was to go and negotiate with the tribes in May of 1861. He was a very popular lawyer in looking for an opportunity just to be able to talk with those tribes. Pike and Ben McCulloch, given command of the Indian Territory, traveled to meet up with Cherokee Chief John Ross, urging the Cherokee to sign a treaty. But Ross was like, I don't know. I don't feel comfortable with this. This doesn't seem like something I can support. Didn't want to get his people in the war. They had already lost people in the Trail of Tears. They did not want to lose more people in this war. That'd be too cruel. So Pike continued on with others. He got the look to the Divided Creek Nation in July, followed by the Chickasaw and the Choctaw tribes. The Confederacy assumed guardianship. Oh, excuse me. I'm yawning so much. Assumed guardianship, and here is your definition for that: occurs when someone legally has the authority to make decisions for the care and control of all the property in someone. Because you have to understand that Indian Territory was a part of the Union, and the Union had made treaties, negotiations that the federal government would support them financially and provide certain resources and opportunities to these Indian tribes. And the Confederacy was like, "Hey, we'll take over that. We'll have responsibility. Just make sure we can control the land and have access to resources." So, however, signing this treaty meant that those contracts with the Union were now were in void, and risk of being voided, and ultimately hurting their relationship with the Union. So before turning home, the Pike was told that Chief John Ross of Cherokee did not want to be the only tribe to eventually join the Confederacy. So the Cherokee would join, which is answer number 18, the Confederacy, and they would be the last tribe to do so. The Confederate Outpost, or your definition for outpost, a station in a remote or sparsely populated area, was built in Indian Territory on the Texas Road in November of 1861. Much of these posts were commissioned by Pike. A lot of these posts located northeast of present-day Muskogee, named that post after Fort Davis, and that's your answer number 19, in honor of the President Jefferson Davis of the Confederacy. And in March of 1862, Fort Davis was ultimately abandoned, and Pike's troops moved 150 miles to Fort McCulloch, and that's your answer number 20, for which happened to be on the Blue River. War on Indian land. Pike's mission through the Indian Territory had opened up a lot of old wounds for the territory, especially that with the Union. So a lot of Native Americans didn't like the Union and how they forced them out of their homes and into Indian Territory. So this was going to cause also some who did support the Union to want to stay neutral and not be a part of the Confederacy. So this started to turn on people. That you're going to have some Native American tribes that are going to be in support of the Confederacy, and others who still want to stick with the Union and did not favor that of the Confederacy, but they're being overpowered. So the differences in the Indian Territory weren't always openly hostile, but the distinction continued, and the Civil War brought a lot of dissimilarities. One issue that ultimately happened was with the Loyal Creek. And your definition for Colonel Cooper is all in blue here. So the Confederacy Treaty, in spite of the Confederacy Treaty, the Upper Creek, which is known as the Loyal Creek, was led by Apophahoya, and they did not support the Confederacy, and they did not want to continue to be a part of this war. So a large number of them appealed to President Lincoln into Washington for help. They wanted to remain with the Union, but the Union is pretty much like, look, we can only do so much, and we can't really support you right now. But they were going to stay loyal to the Union, and they'd be known as the Loyal Creek. And so this included 6,500 Native Americans from other tribes as well. The Confederacy Colonel Cooper, however, learned of this attempt to seek federal help. So to avoid confrontation with Cooper's regiment, the loyal Indians, led by aging Apophahoya, head north toward Kansas, the Union state, hoping that maybe they would get the assistance there. So we see on November 19th, 1861, Cooper's 2,000-man regiment would find out about the loyal Native Americans moving up north, and then went after them and attacked them right around Round Mountain. debates whether it's in Yale or Northwest Tulsa, but a lot of people believe that it is, it's here in Manford, is where Round Mountain is. Darkness halted the skirmish, and neither side would claim victory that day, and giving the Loyal Creek some time to move along. We see that the creek would be able to move north and reorganize there. And then we would see that weather turned cold. Apotheohoya led the group to Chusto Talasa, or caving banks at Bird Creek, north the Creek settlement of Town or Tulsa. So they make their way up north into Tulsa. Cooper's regiment would try to go after them again, and he attacked them on December 9th, and the battle ended in a stalemate, and Cooper retreated to Fort Gibson. And we'll continue the story in the part 2. So we're not done just quite yet with the Loyal Creek.